everyone, what's up? It's Jessie. In today's video, I'm going to be doing 10 mini book reviews. Now, I have been in like 5 separate reading slumps in the past 3 months. It has been terrible, so I've only read like 10 books in the past 3 months, plus like the 3 I'm reading right now. This is kind of like a January / February / half of March wrap up. I'm just gonna go through 10 books that I have finished through these 2.5 months of 2016, and I'm just going to give you mini reviews and synopses of what I thought about these books. I'm going to do this in order from what I've read this year. The first book of 2016 that I read was Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. A guy I went out with recommended me this book, so I picked it up and I read it and I absolutely loved it. I had never read any of Neil Gaiman's work. I know he has a lot of hype around him, so I decided to pick up first. I read The Graveyard Book, which I loved, and then, of course, I read Neverwhere. So I feel like when you read Neil Gaiman's work, you can definitely tell that it's Neil Gaiman's writing. His stories are very different and so enjoyable and just captivating and weird and just fantastical. So this book, Neverwhere, is about the main character, Richard, who is going out on a date with his fiancée, Jessica, to meet a businessman, and he finds a bloody man in the street. Basically, his wife says, Richard, just leave her there, leave her alone, somebody will come get her, we're already late. If you don't come with me, this engagement's off. So Richard takes this girl and he gets thrown into this fantasy world where he goes underground and discovers London below, and it's crazy and it's such a fun journey, and I absolutely love this book. I just gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was great. I love it. I really want to read more of Neil Gaiman's work, so if there's any of his writings that you'd want me to read, just comment below and I shall check others out. Next up, I read Siege and Storm, the second book in the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo. Now, I wasn't a fan of the first book in this trilogy, which is Shadow and Bone, but you can definitely see a huge improvement in Leigh's writing and the character development. So I definitely really enjoyed Siege and Storm way more than Shadow and Bone, and I really want to get to Ruin and Rising, the third book in this trilogy. I don't really want to explain too much about this book without spoiling it if you haven't read the first one, but I definitely recommend that you guys should check out the Grisha trilogy and join in on the hype because it's really good. So if you read the first one and don't think you're gonna finish the rest of the series, I definitely recommend continuing on because I did love it. 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Infinite Sky by CJ Flood. Now, I've had this book on my shelf for 2 years, and I have like over 300 books in my TBR pile. This definitely wasn't near the top, but I just wanted to do something different, so I picked this book out randomly and just began reading. In the prologue, it already starts off with a funeral, so you already know what's going to happen at the end of the book, and I thought that was really unique and interesting, and I just wanted to see how that played out, if it would work in this book, and I think that it really did. Reading this book, I loved the young relationship between the two main characters, even though it was kind of like a forbidden friendship. And so they find each other and they become friends, and then some stuff goes down, there's trouble, and then obviously you know what the ending's gonna be, who's gonna die. And even though you know at the beginning, I still cried at the end, and I think that that's so cool that CJ Flood was able to still keep that kind of a mystery in there and still have you drawn in even though you know what's going to happen. I think I would give it like a 3.9 stars out of 5. 3.9 out of 5. It's basically almost 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. And as you guys know, I'm not really a contemporary fan, so that says a lot if I liked a contemporary. Next up, we have Six of Crows, again by Leigh Bardugo. This is separate from Leigh Bardugo's Grisha trilogy, but it does take place in the Grisha universe. So this book follows 6 outcasts, and they have one really big heist that they're on a journey to get paid a lot of money for this heist. One thing that I really loved about this book was the distinctness of the characters. Now, sometimes it's hard when you're going back and forth between multiple points of views in a book, but I think that it really worked in Six of Crows. I just love how distinct Leigh Bardugo made these characters, that you could tell them apart and they're memorable and you just feel for them all. And when they're on this journey and adventure, you want to know what happens next, and it just definitely kept me at the edge of my seat wanting more. So I really cannot wait for the next book in this series, which I believe is called Fallen Kingdoms. You can read this book without reading the Grisha trilogy first. There are mention of characters from the Grisha trilogy, but you're not going to be lost. It explains it kind of. And if you have read the Grisha trilogy and are looking to read this book, I think you will enjoy it all the more just knowing what happened. I give Six of Crows 5 out of 5 stars. Now the next book is one that I don't personally own. I had to read it for school, and that book is Farewell to Manzanar by Jeannie Wakatsuki Houston. I think I pronounced that right. I'm not sure. Farewell to Manzanar is about Jeannie's childhood. It's kind of autobiographical, and it's about her story at the Manzanar internment camp in California. So as I did enjoy this book, there were just parts that made me rate it lower on my scale just because I feel like there was a lot of back and forth. I don't know if it was just me, but I could not tell when I was reading. Of course, I was reading like 3 other books at the time, but when I was reading, it just kept going back and forth, and I was confused like whether we were talking about a modern day moment or story or we were talking about back. There was just weird switching around in it for me that didn't really keep me focused and want to read more. It didn't really keep my interest up in it. Definitely interesting to hear about what her life was like and going through that experience, but it just didn't really captivate me and keep me in that much. It was a bit confusing to me with the switching around in it. I rate Farewell to Manzanar 3 out of 5 stars. Next, we have a book that everybody has been telling me to read, and that book is Cinder by Marissa Myers, the first book in the Lunar Chronicles series. This book is kind of a futuristic, different retelling of Cinderella, and as so is every other book in this series, it's based on a fairy tale just told in this different world setting. This is a book unlike one that I read in a really long time where I did not expect the ending. I know some people did, but I didn't. When I read those few lines in like the last few chapters, whatever it was, I was like, wait, what? I did not expect that. And also, I really love that. I love the chemistry between our 2 main characters, Cinder and Kai, and I want to read more, so I definitely want to continue with this series because I think people have told me that they come in like the novellas or something. I would personally rate this book like a 4.4 out of 5 stars, so it's pretty high up there for me. I really enjoyed Marissa Myers' writing a lot. If you have not read the Lunar Chronicles series and are still debating on joining the bandwagon on this, I definitely think that you should, because I was skeptical about it for a really long time, and I'm kind of pissed at myself that I waited that long, and yeah. Next, we have Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Main character Darrow is the lowest in the cast of a color-coded society. He is a helldiver on Mars. This book does take place on Mars. It is a sci-fi young adult novel. I don't want to say too much about the plotline without giving away what drove this story, how it got to that place. What I really found amazing about this book is I was like crying in the first 3 chapters. Pierce Brown's writing is so beautiful and emotional, and I love this story that this is actually my 2nd time reading this book. I read this book almost near when it came out when the hype was really getting big, and since the 3rd book came out, I wanted to reread it so I could continue on with this series with a fresh mind. It's a 5 out of 5 stars, definitely. I love it. You should read it too. Next, we have The Siren by Kiera Cass. You may recognize Kiera Cass. She wrote the Selection series, which is amazing. The Siren is actually a standalone book. It's Kiera Cass's first standalone that is separated from the Selection series, even though it has a similar cover, don't get confused. This book is about, drumroll please, sirens. I think I would kind of enjoy almost anything Kiera Cass writes. Her writing is really smooth, and I just really enjoy reading her work. This book is about a girl named Kylene who's in a cruise ship in like the early 1940s. It doesn't say a time period, but it's 80 years later in the future, so it's kind of assumed that it's in like the 1940s. She's on a cruise ship, there's a noise, a singing, everybody's drawn to the edge, everybody's jumping overboard, the ship's sinking, she's in the water, all of a sudden she's begging to have her life back. And so these sirens pick her out of all those people to become a siren and join their siren squad. Sirens are like the children for the sea. They have to serve the ocean for 100 years, and they have to sing to feed the ocean and kill people in the water. There's no real purpose. That was one thing I didn't really like, is that it doesn't really explain why the ocean needed people, why the sirens had this job. It just is. So Colleen meets this boy named Akinley, and obviously she can't talk because her voice is deadly. And slowly she starts to gather feelings for Akinley. It's a really great book. If you're into mythological stuff, I would recommend this book. Since this is a short synopsis review video, if you want to hear more, you should definitely check out the live show I did with my friend Victoria on her channel, Novel Reality. I'll link it below. I rated this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars.
I just loved hearing about a world that wasn't in the Selection series.
Next we have Sublime by Christina Lauren. Sublime is a love story between a ghost and a human. We start off with this girl named Lucy who's waking up and doesn't know where she is, and Lucy is a ghost. And then we have the other main character, Colin, who finds Lucy and they fall in love, sort of. And then they have to solve this mystery as to why Lucy came back as a ghost, why is she on this high school campus, and everything. So Colin tries to go along and find out why Lucy died, and it's kind of this mystery and love story all at once. I wasn't too much a fan of this book. I mean, the writing was okay. I found the concept really interesting, but at times it was really frustrating. At moments I really wanted to shake the characters and knock some sense into them. So it wasn't my favorite book, although it was really enjoyable. Like, I don't regret reading it. I really liked the story. It's like a contemporary ghost love story, which is cool. I rate this book about a 3.3-ish out of 5 stars. Next book I have for you guys is Breathe Annie Breathe by Miranda Kenneally. I really enjoyed this book. I just finished it last night. Breathe Annie Breathe is about our main character named Annie, whose boyfriend has passed away. And you go through this whole book not knowing how her boyfriend died until the end you find out. But basically her boyfriend passed away and he was planning on running this huge country music marathon that was like 26 miles. So Annie trains and wants to run this marathon in his memory. It was really cool to see Annie start off barely being able to run a mile to being able to run 26 miles. And that is some kick-ass training. I don't know if I'd ever be able to have the courage to do that.
I can hardly run half a mile.
What I loved most, I think, about the story was the writing and the dialogue. There were multiple parts of this book where I just laughed out loud from some of the lines. And there were parts where I just found the main character Annie a little whiny, but beside that, I did really enjoy the story. I did enjoy the love story that her sort of go on this journey and slowly move on as she meets another boy. And you will find out all their